After an atheist neighbor has an affair with his wife, a fundamentalist and vengeful Catholic forces the man to choose between committing suicide or allowing someone else to die in his place. We begin with Detective Hollis, who is at a fertility clinic to donate his sperm. But at that moment, the doctor informs him that he is sterile, and that he has been so for his entire married life. The detective is completely devastated by the news, as he had 2 children. Time passes, and Hollis is now in his office. He is interrupted by a partner who informs him that a man named Gavin is about to jump from the top of the building. Hollis goes to the top floor to dissuade him and tries to calm Gavin down by asking him a couple of routine questions. Gavin reveals that he has no choice but to stay on the ledge until noon and then jump. Otherwise, someone else will die. And there is no way Officer Hollis can change Gavin's mind. For this, there is a little over an hour left. When Hollis asks him what happened, Gavin takes us into a flashback. A couple had moved into Gavin's building, Shauna and her husband Joe. He sees her just as she was leaving the building. Both take the same bus and smile at each other. Later, Gavin, who works as a hotel manager, is surprised to see that Shauna had applied for a job at the same place. After a brief interview, Gavin hires Shauna to start working immediately. Later at home, he tells his gay friend, Chris, about the new staff. Coincidentally, Shauna and Gavin are neighbors, and now they also work together, which seems quite curious to Chris. But Gavin dismisses any ideas his friend has in his head, since Shauna is a married woman. Shortly after, Shauna and her husband, Joe, knock on Gavin's door to introduce themselves. Then Joe invites Gavin and Chris over for dinner. Both gladly accept the invitation. The night arrives for Gavin and Chris to meet at Shauna's house, and they go to the couple's apartment. When Joe asks Shauna to go get some wine, Gavin goes to the kitchen to help her, and they chat for a moment. Joe mistakenly thinks that Gavin and Chris are a gay couple and prays for them at the table, calling them an abomination. Offended, Gavin abruptly leaves their home. It turns out that this new couple are deeply conservative devotees. The next day at the hotel, Shauna apologizes to Gavin for what happened the night before. Gavin, to ease the tension a bit, invites her to lunch. As they walk, Shauna tells him that Gavin is wrong about her husband. She tells him about the terrible childhood she had and how her husband Joe saved her life by helping her with her drug addiction. Later, Gavin offers her a drink, hinting at a drinking problem despite her modest attitude. He is surprised to see Shauna open the bottle with her teeth. They talk about Chris, Gavin's friend, and Shauna learns how Gavin took him in. When Chris lost his job due to the discovery of his HIV-positive status, it was Gavin who helped him by offering him a place to live. After this, we return to the present. Turns out that Gavin was telling all of this to Hollis. Right then, the officer receives a call from his wife, Angela, but Hollis does not answer. At that moment, we see flashbacks of that morning. His children were running excitedly out of the house to greet him. Then, Hollis confronts his wife and demands to know whose children those really were. He is completely furious at having been deceived, being made to believe they were his children all these years. After this flashback, the story returns to Gavin, who continues to recount everything he experienced with Shauna. The next morning, Joe apologizes for assuming Gavin was gay, but tells him that if he doesn't change his ways, he is going to hell. Gavin quickens his pace, telling him that they should talk about gays in hell and why not. But at another time, since he was running a bit late for work, before parting ways, Joe invites Gavin to join him on Wednesday night. While riding the bus, Gavin tells Shauna that he used to be married, but his wife had left him. He begins to flirt with her until the woman reminds him that she is married. When Wednesday night arrives, Joe preaches to Gavin about his religion. As an atheist, Gavin argues that it is ridiculous to believe that only religious people will be saved, and reproaches him that a child was hit by a bus without ever having heard a word about his religion, so he would have to go straight to hell. Joe maintains that spreading the gospel is very important. The situation quickly escalates and turns into a shouting match, which Shauna interrupts, asking Gavin to please leave. Afterwards, she tries to calm her husband down, but he tells her to get away. The next day, Shauna tells Gavin about her past as a drug addict and prostitute. One day she met a pimp. Her pimp sent her to a man at a church and she was beaten there. After the beating, Shauna could barely walk. Joe found her the next morning and took her to the hospital. That is why she feels she owes her life to Joe. Shauna asks Gavin to stay away, and he sadly accepts. 3 weeks later, Shauna sees Gavin comforting a female employee who was crying over the passing of her father, and she is surprised to see Gavin caring for others in that way. At night, while Gavin is smoking outside, Shauna joins him. He invites her to look at the stars and kisses her, but she stops him and leaves. Joe sees her doing things very late and begins to grow suspicious. The next day, Shauna goes to Gavin's office and kisses him, but there is a knock on the door. So Gavin tells Shauna that he will book an hour for them to meet. Shauna will go to the hotel room, and he would email her the details. Later, while Shauna was taking a bath, her husband checks her phone, reading the email. Although, fortunately, Gavin had used a former employee's email, so Joe does not know that Gavin is the person she is cheating on him with. Shauna tells Joe that she has to cover someone's shift at the hotel that night, so she has to leave. She then heads to the hotel room where Gavin was waiting for her. Unknown to Shauna, Joe had followed her there. Shauna and Gavin make love, and when Shauna was about to leave, Joe sees her kissing a man on her way out, but he cannot make out who it is. The next morning, Gavin asks Shauna to leave her husband. Shauna says she feels fear and pity for Joe, but she has also distanced herself from him because she can only think of Gavin, who says he feels the same way about her. That night, Joe has to leave for church business. As soon as he leaves, Shauna goes to Gavin's apartment, unaware that Joe was hiding in the house to find out what his wife was doing. The two make love again while Joe, heartbroken, listens to everything from behind the door. After making love, Gavin reveals that he had a daughter. She had died 2 years prior in a car accident. He always blamed himself because he was driving when a truck was about to crash into them and he turned the steering wheel in the wrong direction, causing the truck to hit the side of the car his daughter was on. His wife could never forgive him for the little girl's death, which led to their separation. Back to the present. Hollis admits that his wife cheated on him, and he recently discovered that the children he thought were his are not biologically his, because he was sterile. Hollis explains that he and his wife struggled to conceive and underwent fertility testing many times, but he never checked the results because his wife said everything was fine. Months later, they had a child who, unknown to Hollis, had been conceived by his own brother through an arrangement he had with his wife. Hollis breaks down in tears while telling Gavin all of this, and begs him to come inside the building. But Gavin tells him that he wants to, but he can't. Their conversation is interrupted by another officer with news about Joe and Shauna. Both are missing. Gavin continues his story. He and Shauna plan to tell Joe the truth about their affair, but Shauna wanted to confess to her pastor first. One day, Joe sees Gavin and Shauna kissing. He books a hotel room at the place where she works, and when Shauna arrives at the room, she is shocked to find her husband there. The next day, Joe invites Gavin to his apartment and reveals his past. Joe was previously married and had 2 children. He had struggled with substance abuse and sin. He lost his job when his wife and children left him. Hitting rock bottom, he walked into a church, found God, and was reborn. Feeling saved and believing that God had sent Shauna for him to take care of her, Joe thought he felt a pure love for her, until the night he heard them making love in Gavin's house. Joe, gun in hand, realizes that he should not die. So, he points the same weapon at Gavin and tells him to read a Bible verse that calls for the death of adulterers. But Gavin responds with a story from the New Testament, where Jesus saved an adulterous woman, challenging that only he who was without sin should cast the first stone. After Joe lets him go, Gavin tries to call Shauna, but Joe answers the phone. He concludes that he is in favor of the ruthless justice read in the Old Testament. But he tells him that both of them did not have to die. Having one of them die is enough. He threatens Gavin, telling him that he has Shauna with a gun to her head, and that he will shoot her at noon unless Gavin jumps from a building. Detective Hollis tells Gavin that if he had told him the truth sooner, they could have found Joe. But he still tries to convince him not to do it. Officers were already searching the hotel across the street for the kidnapper. Taking a look, Hollis notices Joe right in the building opposite them. Joe and Shauna watch everything from across the street, while Gavin is at the top of the other building. When only minutes remain until noon, Hollis begs him not to jump. Gavin asks the detective to tell Shauna that he loved her, and looks at the photo of his daughter one last time, thinking that he did not want the same fate for Shauna. Gavin kisses the photo as the noon bell rings, and then he jumps. The crowd below cannot believe it when they see Gavin fall in the middle of the street. Moments later, the police find Joe and Shauna in a hotel room and arrest him. Later at the police station, Hollis tells Shauna that Gavin loved her. She thanks him before leaving and sees her husband praying in his cell as she exits the place. At the end of the day, Detective Hollis cries sitting in his car while watching his family inside his house. He remembers Gavin's words to go to them and accept them, because it wasn't a matter of deception, but about saving the family by bringing children. His children wave to him as he walks in, and they have dinner together. Apparently, Hollis is willing to forgive his wife, and he tells the children that he is their father.